in verse 8, have you considered my servant? And all those ugly accusations were made by Job. God's confidence in Job was so strong that he decided that he was going to let Satan test him, put trials in his life. I need to make a practical application here to our moment right now. Friends, I want you to realize that the Bible teaches us, it's always been there. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13, we are reminded that God never allows us to suffer or be tried above that which we are able, listen to it, to bear. That's why we're told to bear one another, to encourage one another, to strengthen one another. We're in this together. We need to remember that Satan has no power against a saint further than God permits, according to John chapter 19 and verse 11. Amen. This enemy that comes against Job, Job didn't let his faith be destroyed. He was strengthened. And so, after Satan had done all that, the second wave comes and he begins to attack his health. And he steps it all up. But in all of this, what does Job do? He had become so devoted to God. He had become so at peace with what God was doing in him. This is where we read there in Job 1 and verse 21. Draw your eyes to this powerful verse, often used in funerals. But you got to know the setting, you got to know the situation to get to where Job says these words. He says, naked I came from my mother's womb. Naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away. Blessed, praise He gives God. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Let me give you 4 quick things to gain from that. Let me remind you this morning that an argument of contentment is given here. We started out with nothing. We will end with nothing this side of eternity. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 7. It's not about how much stuff and junk that we can collect, but are we prepared to be with God in eternity? Number 2, this is an argument for submission. We will need nothing in the end. All we need is Jesus in the end when this life is over. Ecclesiastes 5 and verse 15. This is an argument for dependence. For us not to put our dependence in what we can do, how we're going to deal with the pandemic, how we're going to deal with our trials. Nothing he had was his. Nothing we have is ours. It all belongs to God. 1 Corinthians 4 and verse 7. And finally, there's an argument of resignation. To be resigned. God had every right to take what was his. And we learn this from James chapter 1 and verse 7. How do you deal with your pain? How do you deal with your afflictions? Are you letting them control you? Are you letting them destroy you? Or are you letting them build strength in you? Afflictions are inevitability. I shouldn't have put that word in the sermon. But they're going to happen in our lives. And friends, how we respond to them is whether or not we're going to get to that place where we can have joy and hope and mature faith. I want you to know that every step, you're rising up and you're going down. God sees it all. He sees, He knows, and He wants to deliver you and I. Psalm 31, verse 7 through 10.